Welcome to Cirrius Talk, the Military Minute. I'm your host, Greg Banks. Thanks for joining me today. If you've ever looked at a civilian job posting and thought, I know I can do this, I just don't know how to translate what I did in uniform, this episode's for you. Today, I'm joined by Charlotte Creech, Chief Program Officer at 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗄 USA, an organization that's been helping service members, veterans, and military spouses succeed in the civilian workforce for 20 years. We get real practical. What it really takes to land meaningful employment, how coaching and mentoring actually help, and how AI is changing the job hunt. Plus, why veterans already have strengths that map into AI resilient career paths. All right, let's get into it. All right, excited to have on the show today Charlotte Creech. Charlotte is with 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗄 USA. You're the Chief Program Officer there. We're going to talk more about what your day-to-day routine is in that role. But in doing a little research on you, I find out that although that's your day job, that's also what you do outside of work. So tell me a little bit about your background, what you do at HHUSA, and let's get going with it.
Sure. Well, first, Greg, so great to be here. Thanks for having me today. I'm really excited to share more information about our organization and hopefully give some action-oriented steps for the listeners. But as far as me and my background, I always start with my why and really why I'm passionate about this space and why I decided to work in the nonprofit sector and at 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗄 USA specifically. It's because of my husband. I'm married to an Air Force veteran. He enlisted straight out of high school right during the terrorist attacks of September 11th and saw many different things during his tenure in the military. But when he transitioned out, he faced the usual challenges and struggles that many folks do. And so it was eye-opening for me as the bystander and the person standing beside him to try and help him navigate through some of those opportunities and challenges. And it's really what inspired me to invest my time in working in, again, the nonprofit sector and specifically here at 𝗁𝗲𝗄𝗄 USA. So my role is Chief Program Officer. What that means literally is I oversee all of our programs. So all of our client-facing services, which I'll talk about in a minute. But I also oversee all of our back-end operations. So how we deliver those services, how we engage with clients, how we make sure that they're serviced well and satisfied throughout the process, how we engage our volunteers and our mentor community. And then the other piece that has been a lot of fun since coming here is also working on the future of systems, technology, people, and process. So leading our digital transformation and talking about all things AI, which seems to be the buzzword or buzz phrase of the day. So also trying to understand when your core service is human service provided, where are the opportunities and what should you or shouldn't you be enabling with AI? So thinking through what the future of delivering personalized service looks like in an AI-enabled world.
Yeah, two little letters have just turned the world upside down and inside out in the last couple of years. It's been interesting to watch. I'm glad you threw in not just what's happening on the veteran and mil spouse facing side of things, but the operations, what's going on behind the scene with mentors. I am certain in this space, in the VSO space and not-for-profit space, very often you're aiming at a moving target. Fundraising is hard. Finding partners is hard. What you're allowed to do and still be nonprofit, all those things are challenges above and beyond just doing the day-to-day. How do I remain successful in this? On top of that, doing it in the tech space in particular, right? But you're a moving target aiming at a moving target, right? So there's a lot to juggle here. I don't envy your position at all, but yeah, I can understand the challenge there. Very, very grateful to hear about it. Tell me a little bit before you got there, and there's no doubt the why is important, right? It's a very difficult thing to get up every day and do this, even if you love it. If you don't have a good why behind it, I would say that's a well that's going to run dry quicker. But knowing that your husband was serving and served, and then you saw the headwinds that made no sense on paper. Why in the world is he struggling with this? But the fact is real and it's prevalent across the entire military community. What was some background you had coming into this that amped you up for getting into this space and knowing you'd be effective at it?
Well, first and foremost, I come from an entrepreneurial background. My family owned a car dealership. So growing up, I was always kind of engaged with the family business. I was used to problem solving. I was really tuned into the importance of working with people, building relationships, and delivering trusted quality service. And so I guess I always had kind of that entrepreneurial spirit and a penchant and interest in going into the business world. But when I got to the business world, my first job out of college, it was great and I was treated wonderfully and had the opportunity to deliver impact. But I felt kind of that lack of mission or calling. And so as all of that was happening, I had this business degree, working in my first job in corporate America in insurance and financial services, making great money, learning a lot, growing fast. So many positive things about it. But at the time, as I mentioned, my husband had was serving and got called up and deployed to Iraq. And so as he was on his combat deployment, it kind of turned my life upside down a little bit. Just life happens and life influences change in a different direction. Although I was doing well in my intended career path, after witnessing his journey and seeing that it wasn't just him, it was hundreds of thousands of other service members going through some of these same issues or navigating these same challenges, it really is what inspired me to say, I think there's a better way to apply my business skills where I can have a greater feeling of meaning, impact, and most importantly, take the same things I'm doing for him and magnify and amplify those to help a lot more people. So it was really kind of that, maybe a little bit combined with my background, coming from a family-owned business. And I naively decided to quit my day job. I was getting my MBA. I guess I neglected to mention that, and taking some entrepreneurial studies courses, learning about venture capital and how to build a business, et cetera. And so I really just naively said, this is the problem I'm passionate about solving. My husband's experience is not unique to him, and I think I can have greater purpose and meaning and impact. So I'm going to start a business to try and solve this need, which at the time was helping veterans make successful transitions from higher education to civilian employment and helping them understand like really the financial asset that is the GI Bill benefit. Which at the time was very complicated. And this was before the VA had all of their GI Bill calculators and widgets. So all of that to say that I decided to go be an entrepreneur, to become a tech CEO, to just build a business based on purpose, passion, and my husband's direct experience. And then lots of conversations with other veterans that were going through the same thing. And one thing led to another. And that's how I ended up working in the space, and eventually leading another nonprofit as well, helping veterans and military spouses become tech CEOs and grow scalable technology ventures.
Wow. Yeah. You're not scared. I'll give you that. Yeah. I mean, I can only fathom having a spouse on the other side of the world earning hazard pay. Let's just set it at that. That in and of itself is hard enough. But then also right out of college to find yourself in a career that you don't have passion to. That those are two. You put those two things together, it's a recipe for a very, very hard time while your husband's away. So I can certainly understand the idea of going and fine, but to say I'm just going to go fix this, that also was a pretty big bite to take. Go ask Google how many organizations are and how many need fixing. The number's probably close to the same, because at the end of the day, you're trying to get as much juice out of the squeeze, whether it's the GI Bill or VA benefits or claims or any of those things, right? Those are all benefits that are earned by veterans, and it shouldn't be so freaking hard for them to actually cash in those things and go do them. The government has no problem cashing the check that they offer up, a blank check to go do whatever they tell them. It should reciprocate. So I appreciate the passion for that. That's incredible. To know that problem is out there. How did you define that? How did you, because when you say I'm going to go solve this challenge, right, there's an infinite number of things to go at. How did you go about defining the scope of the problem you were going to try and attack? You mentioned higher education. That's unique to what I hear to a lot of organizations, because most of them are like, they don't want to go to college. They want to just get out here and go to work. They don't want to they don't want to go spend 4 more years pursuing something and then find out there's no passion here either. So how did you go about articulating the items that you were going to do as a part of what you were trying to start up?
Yeah, well, for those who have worked in an entrepreneurial space or maybe gone through a boot camp training program, we talk a lot about customer discovery and finding product market fit. And so a lot of this just has to do with a lot of repetitions and interviews when you're first trying to understand what is the problem that I'm trying to solve, who is experiencing that problem, what shape does it take, how prevalent is the problem, how is it happening, where is it appearing, who does it impact, who are the other stakeholders involved. So it usually starts with one individual's lived experience and identifying, gosh, I've got a challenge or I've got a problem. But then where it goes from there is having open-ended conversations with other people about the same topic, and then connecting those dots and understanding, is this problem unique to me, or is this a bigger problem or a more prevalent problem? Really trying to understand what is the magnitude and impact of this problem, and also what is the impact of solving this problem? How does it make life better? How does it solve a persistent need that a person has? How does it save taxpayer dollars by better allocating the GI Bill resources and making sure that veterans are being matched to higher education programs where they will actually be supported and have a chance at graduating and getting the right fit positions and employment afterwards. So customer discovery is always the starting point in any time you have that initial inkling that there's a problem, and then trying to validate that the magnitude and severity of that problem even before you get to solutioning. And so once you have clear
Yeah.
identification of the problem, then you can start to build the solution around it.
Very interesting point. I say this a lot in the tech industry. Instead of ready, fire, aim, which we
Yeah.
see a lot of, ready, aim, fire. Aim is, what is it that I'm going at? And I'm sure with your husband facing that challenge, he was surrounded by people like-minded, like experience, facing like problems. So you had a pretty good sample set to pull from, I would imagine, as you started into that. But more importantly, what I heard you say was, this wasn't about defining a problem and going and trying to find more money, more grants. This was really about knocking down some inefficiencies and bringing focus to some things that might already be in place. So you didn't have to go generate a crap load of funding to kick off this thing you were doing. Like, this was really just about becoming an assistance thing to help drive what should already be in place, right?
Yeah,
Is that fair?
absolutely. And way back when, we were trying to build a SaaS platform, and we did build an early prototype and get it to market and help a lot of people along the way. But it was never about the money. It was never about me becoming rich or becoming the next Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. It was, again, really about solving a user need and a challenge
Mhm.
for somebody that I really cared about. And then in the process of having more conversations, realizing that there was a much larger need and many more
Yeah.
people experiencing the same thing. And what we learned in the journey that was really interesting, originally when I was pitching this concept and idea, it was all based around the veteran experience. But what I found is that it wasn't really resonating with civilians. And it wasn't until I was able to frame the problem equally for how this helps the veteran, but also how this helps all citizens, all taxpayers, because if we do a better
Yeah.
job of allocating government spend, we all benefit. We all lose when we improperly spend $10 billion a year on the GI Bill and the veteran
Mhm.
still doesn't graduate or doesn't get
Yeah.
a living wage and meaningful
Sure.
employment coming out of it.
So you mentioned your husband serving. Was he already in the military when y'all got married?
Yes, he was. He
He
served
was. Okay.
first. He was active duty first before I met him. I met him
Okay.
when he was just coming off active duty, but still in the reserves. And then his combat deployment was while he was with his reserve unit.
Okay. So as a military spouse, right? I mean, obviously that explains the passion, and no need to go further with that. But were there
No.
things about marrying into that just your eyes were just widely opened up? I would imagine marrying a reservist, like, you kind of know some things going with that. You've seen movies, right? but but as he gets called up, I got to imagine there's a whole lot of different other things going through your mind. What were some things in those early days that just really kind of surprised you to the milspouse life?
Yeah, well, specifically, again, at the time I was working in corporate America. We are polar opposites. I went to college. I always knew I was going to college. I came out with a great network, a great job, an easy way to pay my bills. He had the opposite experience. First generation college student, didn't really, that was never an option to him. It was not a path he was interested in. He always had a calling to serve and kind of knew that when he turned 18, he was going to enlist in the military, and he had hoped that that would be something that would open doors for him later through the GI Bill or through training that he would receive, and then he'd figure out the other details as they came. So we came from such different backgrounds to start, and things that were readily available to me in terms of resources and networks were not readily available to him. And so just that was eye opening in and of itself, that he was starting from scratch. He didn't have, close familial relationships that could help him network to a job opportunity. And then not having anybody to go to for advice on how to attend higher education, how to write a college essay, how to get your transcripts after you've been away from school for 5 years. I really had to become not only his significant other, but also his career advisor. And while he was deployed, I was the one, of course, stateside doing a lot of that research. Even the things that he didn't ask me about, I was sort of just out of curiosity and trying to anticipate what he might need when he came back from his deployment, trying to do that research. But I didn't know what I didn't know. And I didn't have the awareness and connections on the military side to do any of that efficiently. And I wasn't part of any spouse groups or anything. So
Yeah.
to me, it seems like such a simple thing, but that was what was most surprising and eye-opening, is just the level of disconnect and kind of the divide between those two worlds of, to me, what was a very natural transition to go from college to
Mhm.
corporate America was completely unnatural to him.
Yeah, it seems I'm trying to think back. I don't even know what year that was, but just growing up, remembering seeing commercials for advertising the military and about the GI Bill, and it really sounds like on the back end of service, right? You get a smooth off ramp into whatever your next successful life would be. But to your point, you don't spend a lot of time networking in the Army.
Right.
If one of your service member friends or your brothers and sisters, which not if they start a company and hire you, that's probably your best bet for networking coming out of the military. So you mentioned startup. But I also know you're at Our Heroes USA today. So talk a little bit about
Yes.
that transition from where you were to where you are.
Yeah, well, I could have never planned it this way, but it all makes sense in retrospect. As I mentioned, I started with a business degree, business background, went to corporate America, decided I needed to do something where could feel a more direct impact and meaning in my work. So started a startup, and then I had the opportunity to go through an organization called Patriot Boot Camp, which was at the time just an event that was being hosted free of charge. It was intended to help veterans and military spouses that were interested in being entrepreneurs and specifically in growing technology focused companies. It was just a 3-day feeder program. We got to learn about the life of a startup entrepreneur, what it takes to grow a company. And then the best part was that we were introduced to a variety of mentors that had already been successful growing scalable tech ventures. So getting to learn from them, get their advice, and kind of truly understand what is a day in the life like of an entrepreneur was really valuable. As I was first, I benefited from that as I was growing my own company, and then as I was looking for my next move after running my startup, Create Bootcamp was looking to hire its first executive director and bring on somebody that could kind of take it from just a one-off volunteer event to a sustainable program and nonprofit organization. I had no previous background in nonprofit administration. I had only worked on the for-profit side in corporate America. But because of the natural connection to the military and serving the military community, it made a lot of sense. So I went to run Patriot Boot Camp for 3 years, loved every bit of that, and had the opportunity to help a variety of other veterans and spouses start companies. And then through that, got to know USAA as one of our corporate sponsors. And in getting to know USAA, they were starting a new innovation team and needed somebody that had a strong connection to the military community, but an entrepreneurial spirit. And they wanted to start a new innovation team. So I got recruited to go work for USAA and lead product development and innovation. So went back to corporate America on the for-profit side, and had the opportunity to learn about all kinds of AI and disruption and um, building real solutions for the USAA membership, serving the military community. And when that started to become less exciting and less challenging over time, it's really what started to pull me back to the nonprofit space and say, now that I have more of this corporate experience, how can I leverage my skills to, again, go back to doing something
Mhm.
where I have
Yeah.
maybe a little more control over how
Yeah.
I spend my time and how I deliver value. So I just kind of through my own network heard that Hire Heroes USA was recruiting a chief program officer, and it seemed like the right time, the perfect fit. And so again, it's kind of a weird career journey to bounce back and forth between for profit, being a startup CEO, back to to nonprofit, back to for profit, and now back to nonprofit. But in retrospect, it makes perfect sense because the common thread through all of that is I'm really passionate about serving the military veteran community and using my skills to give back.
Man, I hear so much of the right place, wrong time, or wrong place, right time story, but your story sounds like right place, right time. The Venn diagram of people with for-profit business experience and also a nonprofit mindset and passion to come together. That's not exactly major coursework in any college program. So for you to
Exactly.
have that experience and that passion, I can see where that's a win-win for everybody involved. Great to hear. So let's turn the page directly into Hire Heroes USA. Before we get into the meat potato of the program itself and how y'all are structured and what it's offering, just give me the flyover commercial for the kind of the programs you offer. What are some of the stats? How many people a year are you seeing? What I'm sure there's a slide somewhere that has all the stats for you guys. Give me an introduction to the program.
Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I'll start with our mission. We exist to empower U.S. military members, veterans, and military spouses to succeed in the civilian workforce. So we are exclusively focused on helping the military population transition to meaningful careers in whatever that definition means to them. Usually it takes the form of more traditional careers, but entrepreneurship is always part of that as well. How we do it and in terms of the services that we provide personalized one-on-one career coaching. So everything from literally writing a resume to setting somebody up with a mentor for mock interview practice. We provide employer spotlights and virtual career fairs. We also have a host of about 200 other partners. So if somebody comes to us and is interested, they started here, these are the skills that they have, but they're looking to go in a different direction or pivot, we can connect them with one of our training partners for additional education, whether it's formal education or more informal certification and training programs. As I mentioned, mentoring is a big part of what we do as well. So we have a volunteer network of 1,400 industry subject matter experts. So pretty much any company or any industry that you can think of, if you want to connect with somebody just to better understand what is a day in the life like in this industry or in a project manager role or you name it, it's very likely we have somebody that works in that space or works in that role. So we can set you up for a one-on-one mentoring conversation. They can, again, help you practice for an interview that you might have, or even just help you understand, like, do I actually want to do this type of job? Because sometimes getting to know quickly is just as important as getting to yes and figuring out what it is you want to do. So all of those things are bundled in our services. Some other key things that stand out and set us apart from some of the other VSOs in the space, first and foremost, our eligibility is very broad. We work with everybody. So we want to support you at any age and stage of your career. It does not matter if you are getting ready to transition, if you recently separated, or if you've been in the workforce for 20 years and suddenly figure out or decide this is no longer what I want to do and I want to
have no
reinvent
passion
myself.
For this, right?
It happens all the time. So we do not time box when you can work with us or when you can seek our services. We also support you for life. So again, you can come when you're first transitioning out. It will help you. And if down the road you want to come back and get more assistance, get a new resume, get connected with new mentors, we will help you as many times as you need for as long as you need throughout your career journey. So all of those things really set us apart. We work with everybody and we truly want to serve those that are most at need of services when and how they need them. And then the final question you asked, Greg, was just about stats. So by the numbers, we've been in business for 20 years. We were founded in 2005. So we've been around for a long time. We're very well established. We are extremely proud that we have confirmed more than 116,000 job placements. And when I say confirmed, I mean we have actually validated with the individual that the services we provided helped them achieve their employment. I'm sure there are many more that got a job with our help and happily just went off and started working and never came back and filled out that survey or validated it with us. And then annually, in any given year, we receive about 30,000 requests for help. We write 20,000 resumes a year or more. Those are actual human written resumes, not putting them into an AI assistant and just copying and pasting the output. And then finally, outcomes matter more than anything else. The value we provide. Last year, we confirmed 13,000 job placements, and the average starting salary for our clients was $73,000. So, given all ages, stages, ranks, etc., some really standout outcomes there.
Wow. That's a good slide, Charlotte. Great. I knew you'd been around 20 years. I'm always astounded by the numbers, though. How many applications, how many resumes, and average starting salary. I assume most of those are not necessarily college graduates. These are people who came out and found a skill, learned enough to get
Exactly.
started, and have gone and done it. So that's really, really impressive. Let's talk a little bit about the services you offer. So you mentioned, and I think it's a unique call out that it doesn't matter how old you are or how long you've been out, because that truly is rare. Most transition programs, which is what a lot of the VSOs I look into are about, is from a year before you separate to 6 to 12 months after you separate. There's a very tight window, and the main reason for that is just math, right? There's 200,000 service members per year that get out, right? There's only so much, so we're going to go with the people and try to make the most immediate benefit, so they don't have that down period of we came out of the military and you had nothing. And there's so many problems that come about in that first window, from back home, can't find work, I'm not with my buddies, I don't have hope, I don't have a new purpose post service. So many things come out of that, which may lead to homelessness, may lead to divorce, may lead to drug addiction and suicide. All those things that tend to happen that first 12 to 24 months after they get out. So to hear you guys are there for the long haul is really, really impressive. Talk a little bit about the services you guys offer. I mean, you mentioned some specifics there, but kind of your advice, right? If I were to kind of call you on stage and say we've got a room full of veterans and mill spouses here, how do you kind of wrap that up as to how y'all offer that?
Yeah, well, and just to refresh, so some of the direct services we provide personalized one-on-one coaching. So when you come through our door, you get assigned to your own personal coach. They are with you through the entire journey, and they become your concierge helper through all of the stages. Again, helping everything from resume writing to helping you understand how do my skills translate, how do I prepare for a job interview, what industries or employers make sense for me to consider based on
Mhm.
what my career goals are, etc. So that is a very structured process, and it's tried and proven over a 20-year period. But there are some intangibles, and this is where we'll shift a little bit to just my personal advice based on my observations and the many mentoring conversations I've had and what I've seen work and not work, with this population in particular and with some of our services. And the number one most important thing, which we actually did validate with a data study that we did, which is the impact that you achieve or the outcome, your likelihood of securing a job and securing the right job is greatly amplified based on the number of services you utilize. So if you come to us and you say, all I need is a resume. Just give me a right here. Here's my background. Here's my MOS. Write me a resume. Thanks. Appreciate your help. And then go off into the sunset. That's great. And we're happy to write you a resume and we're happy to support you in that way. But what the data actually shows is that you're far less likely to be successful in the end goal of actually securing the job and having that meaningful employment as opposed to underemployment. If you only leverage our resume services, what we saw is that as our clients kind of combine the magnitude and power of the services. So they get the resume first, then they work with us on skills translation. Then they participate in two different mentor conversations, one to help them build their LinkedIn profile and make themselves marketable to employers, and another to help them actually practice their executive presence and how they respond to interview questions. It's the combination of all of those things together, which ultimately magnifies and increases your likelihood of securing employment either
Mhm.
faster, better, with a higher starting salary, etc. So what I boil that down into in my words of wisdom, are really the quality of the inputs dictate the quality of your outcomes on the back end. And you have to own your journey and you have to put in the work. We can provide you with all of the coaching, all of the services, all of the network connections, but you have to be motivated to participate and really lead through it and invest your own time. So kind of the level of effort and your individual readiness to participate and to be actively engaged in the process ultimately is what dictates how successful you will be or how quickly you will secure employment. So that's kind of an overarching just broad words of wisdom and advice, but again,
Yeah.
it is validated by
Yeah.
an actual data analysis that we conducted when we look at who
That's
was successful and who
yeah.
was not.
I would love to see the questions y'all asked and what the output looked like. One, I'm an engineer. My brain thinks in charts and graphs. But two, in talking to veterans and talking to all these programs, there's not a silver bullet. There's not a one-stop shop that I go do this, and then if everybody does the same thing, we all have the same success. No, you're not the same. The place you're going is not the same. The job you're stepping into is not the same. And I would go so far as to say the order in which you do some of those things matters.
Yes.
Right? If you wait till you get that dream job interview and you've not yet sat down and had a conversation about resume, about interview prep, about executive presence, about those things, I can only fathom taking a 15-year veteran, sit them down and try to, in 48 hours, just drill into their head. Here's how you approach questions. Here's how you dress. Here, that's
Exactly.
nothing going to get them more excited than hearing all that in a short window of time. So to hear about that, the long-term benefit, but two, that you've kind of choreographed. Concierge is a perfect word. Let me walk you through this.
Yes.
While you, again, there's so many different variations that somebody's going to run into, but knowing that you guys have people and connections and all those, and now data to back it up, right? This is just not your gut feeling or the last time I did this worked. So let me try that again, right? You've done enough of this now to actually learn from the things you've done and pour that back into the program.
Yes, for sure. And just to double click on that, the report is about to be published for public consumption, but the sneak preview on it is the data says more than 2 times likely. So clients that work with us versus not are more than 2 times likely to secure a job within 3 to 9 months. And their starting salary is $10,000 higher than individuals that do not take advantage of working with Hire Heroes USA. So I don't know anybody that is eager to not get an extra $10,000 right off the bat. So if that's not a strong value proposition, then I don't know what is, but that's what the data says. And then just going back to kind of my more anecdotal advice, and a lot of this is also my own experience working in corporate America and being on the other side as a hiring manager and a team leader. I will say skills and job experience is what qualifies you for the job in addition to your demonstrated proficiency, but your attitude, your adaptability, and also to some degree your likability, your ability to be a good team player, your ability to collaborate and communicate effectively with others. Those are the attributes that set you apart and are what actually will help you get the job. So there's lots of people that are qualified for the job, and that is table stakes, but there's a big difference between being qualified and actually being offered the job. And so often the success comes from those soft skills, those intangibles, and so much of that can be tied back to effective networking and relationship building.
Interesting. I remember 5 years ago, I was looking at creating a LinkedIn profile, and I remember just kind of coming on, and everybody was a coach, and all these things. It's like, oh my God, how it just sounds all fictitious. But
Yes.
having been on here a while and doing what I do now, and trying to do this for veterans, the 2 words soft skills, right? AI were disruptive letters, but soft skills, I think, are extremely important. I work with a lot of veterans and 𝗵spouses. The 𝗵spouses aren't a problem. The veterans show up with a whole different vocabulary. It's like a lot of the vowels were missing off their keyboard. So learning how to communicate, everything can't be shorthand, particularly like it's one thing to talk to a boss to get a job. It's another thing to talk to a client that way. Inevitably, you're going to come across another veteran on the other side of the table at some point. You guys can reminisce. You can do all your acronyms, and just to hear somebody accurately convey like what deployment, what regiment, whatever they were in is interesting in and of itself. But it just sounds like all around you guys are coming at every angle from it. So I really look forward to reading that report and seeing how it comes out. Let's turn a little bit towards AI, because of everything in the world that you do. I can't imagine any of it is unaffected by AI. I mean, you kind of jokingly said this, like we don't just spit some stuff into AI and copy and paste and go, here's your resume. If you go look on LinkedIn today, 8 out of 10 posts look exactly the same because AI changed the format for a good LinkedIn post.
Yes.
So I tell people all the time, like you can write a resume, but at the end of the day, if you're working or you're applying for a job at a big company, 90% of the resumes are never even seen. Right? There's software, there's people that go through that. So you've got to find some way to crack through the glass ceiling, if you will, to make sure a human sees it before you ever get a chance. If you don't know somebody. So you talked about networking, some other things. I'm sure some of that stuff will play in, but talk to me about how AI is impacting what you guys do and how.
This could be a whole separate conversation, hours long. And I know we don't have that kind of time today, so maybe I'll just give you some of the highlights, but a couple different angles here. first and foremost, everybody's talking about AI, and exactly to your point, it's causing disruption, and especially in the job and employment space, because exactly what you described, everybody's got an AI generated resume. So if everybody is using a system generated resume, where is the differentiation, and how do employers then understand who to even call in for an interview? So it's created so much noise and confusion because everything looks the same. So absolutely, it ties back to the value of personal relationships, networking. Having the qualifications on a piece of paper and a nicely written resume is absolutely important. But if your resume never gets pulled out of the pile and reviewed by a human who's going to make the selection on who gets called in for interviews, then all is lost. You'll never make it to the next step. So those are, just kind of generic observations that we're all seeing and trying to figure out where we go from here. And for us as an organization, it's so interesting because in the nonprofit space, we lead with passion, and we truly are here to serve the individuals that we work with. And yet there's a lot of pressure from funders because we're asking for a benefit to help a veteran or to help a military spouse, but we're not charging the veteran or military spouse for those services. We're asking somebody else to pay
Right.
to support the cost of delivering those services. So there is pressure from funders, not necessarily in a bad way, but just to validate and make sure that we're using AI in a responsible way and in a way that can ensure efficiency of how we run our organization. So there's just been so many questions about how can AI be used to enable efficiency, operational efficiency, or to enable us to serve more veterans and more military spouses without necessarily having to hire tons and tons of more people and add a ton of overhead. So those strategically are the really exciting problems. And I know I label myself as a tech nerd by getting excited about this, but this is kind of the key business challenge of the day of like, how do you take a human experience? Which pieces of it do you automate? Which pieces of it do you augment with AI, but without losing the personal connection? Because the other side of this, which was a little bit surprising to me when I came to the organization, I came in and I thought, I'm going to take all of my corporate best practices working with AI and ML algorithms, and I'm going to automate stuff and make things so much different and better. But what I learned is that repeatedly over and over again, when we look at our client satisfaction surveys and when we have real conversations with our clients, including my own husband, who was a client as well, he said, yes, the resume was valuable. Yes, the mentoring connections are valuable. Yes, all of the services you provide are amazing. But what really meant the most to me was knowing that somebody cared, knowing that I had an actual human behind the services that was checking in on me and helping me and guiding me through that process. That is what ultimately gives our clients confidence and hope and inspiration. And so the services are great. Pieces of the service delivery can be automated and should be automated to make sure we're being good stewards of delivering what our clients need, but also doing it in a cost-efficient way. But we can never remove the importance of that direct human connection in how
Right.
the services are placed in front of one of our clients. And so that's, again, like what I'm spending most of my time on is not about incremental improvement in service delivery per se. It's about how do you offer digital empathy? How do you maintain that trust and that human connection, but do it in a responsible and efficient way behind the scenes? And what do you want to automate and what do you not want to automate? So I'll pause on that side of it as like the business challenge,
Yeah.
and then segue to a report that we conducted and what this means for job seekers and our clients, and maybe some words of advice rooted in the data that everybody can take as an action item if you're about to start your job search. Something we learned from modeling over 65,000 of our client profiles and looking at their career outcomes longitudinally is that military skills and the experience you gain in the military is actually really well suited to position them for careers in industries that are relatively AI resilient. So think about just what logically makes sense transitioning into healthcare. If you were a combat medic, anything transitioning into healthcare, somebody needs to be physically on the scene providing patient care, whether it's in a first responder type situation, a paramedic, etc. Those types of career fields and jobs are much more AI resistant or resilient, like less likely to be
Mhm.
disrupted by AI, and naturally map to many of the skills and experiences that you learn in the military. Um, of course, we know all of the technology that our service members are exposed to, and then specific MOSs that might be attached to information security, cybersecurity, et cetera. Anytime we're talking about computers, algorithms,
Right.
cybersecurity, satellites, communications, mission critical infrastructure, et cetera, those all map really nicely to where we're seeing more investment in careers as a result of AI as opposed to disruption in careers. So we identified what we're calling 6 career sweet spots: information security, healthcare, installation maintenance and repair, engineering, supply chain and logistics, and then management roles like program management, project management, operations management, et cetera, that are both fairly resistant to AI disruption and also have high job satisfaction ratings from the veteran community and naturally transition really well. So the takeaway from all of that is not that you have to go into one of those sectors or careers, but it's really more of an acknowledgement that the data proves that our veterans are already gaining skills that translate really well to careers and sectors that are less likely to be disrupted by AI. So you don't need to be afraid of AI. In fact, embrace it, adopt it, find ways to use it in your day to day, because most likely the skills that you've already gained in military service are going to serve you really well in your job search on the civilian side.
Really good point. Yeah, my brain just kept going to, oh, great, all AI roads don't lead to a sequel of the Terminator, right? There are actual ways that AI can help you. But I love the fact that you've taken data, you've taken tens of thousands of these stories and gone back and kind of reverse engineer them to look through what's the key, the sweet spots, whatnot. And I've got friends that came out of the military that were in some of those tech spaces like cyber intelligence and counterterrorism and all those types of things. And in many cases, the training they're getting in the military is way better than they would have gotten in
Yes.
college. So they're actually coming out ahead of the game to try and find employee in that type of regard. Just so many people get out of the military and I think they see their MOS separate from their service time. So if they were carrying a gun, driving a tank, flying a chopper, those types of things, it's like, maybe you go become a commercial airline pilot, but for the most part, you don't go out and want to do the things you did in the military, or they just don't find a way for it to translate. But in the MOS, so many times there is formal training. And the thing that I
Yes.
have heard, and you've indirectly spoken at it, is those experiences actually matter. But what I find is usually is if they're within 6 months of getting out, or they've only been out 6 months, they're looking back over 4, 8, 10, 12 years and trying to recollect what it was that they did. A, trying to remember it is hard enough. B, trying to articulate it in a way that's going to mean something on a resume that may or may not get seen, right? There's a lot to go wrong in that exercise. And the fact that you've guys tens of thousands of examples and the data proves how that model works bodes very, very well. So with high confidence, anybody steps onto the on-ramp into HHUSA, there's a proven formula if there is such an animal. I know it's not a formula. It's very one-on-one, but just, yeah, that's great to hear.
Yeah, and I think, it's about those repetitions, right? And seeing common profile and pathway types. And the good news is there's as many examples as there are of a client with a particular MOS that did want to make more of what I'd call a lateral transition in the civilian world. There are equally as many examples of folks that came to us and said, I don't know what I want to do next, but I know it's not what I've been doing in the military. So anything
Yeah,
other than that, can you
yeah,
help me find my way?
yeah.
And just by default, because of how many folks we've worked with over a 20-year period, we can find those success stories. And we know just from doing those repetitions and having those conversations, what works, what doesn't work, and what some of those pathways are.
So we've come up with at least 5 more episodes to talk about AI being one of them, but also thinking through knowing you have a lot of volunteers, and I want to talk a little bit about how somebody would get involved in volunteering with you guys. Um, but knowing you've got connections to other companies, these other experiences, these SMEs, if you will, that no matter what, I come to the table and go, hey, I want to try so and so. That you've got somebody that goes, all right, let me let you peek behind the curtain of what that really looks like. My oldest son came to me. He's that age where career counselors are starting to meddle in your life, and he comes to me about what he wants to do. And I said, I told him I want to do what my dad does. I said, "You did? What do you think I do?" He goes, "I don't know. You laugh and you play golf with people." I'm like, "Oh my God." You have no idea what I do. And at that time, I was a project manager doing, anytime I had 10 projects and a lot of headaches. And everything I did were things he hated. I was like, "You would be miserable in this." But I jokingly bring that up, but to say, I would imagine a lot of people saw a commercial, saw an ad in a magazine on the pocket of an airplane, got an idea, and that's what they come to you with. I think I want to be a blank when I grow up. Okay, but before we go train you in that, let me tell you what that really involves. Oh, okay, I see. I didn't think about that. And nobody wants to go through it 2 months or 2 years of training and find out that this was all a waste of time. I just know one more
Yes.
thing that I hate. So great. So let's talk about two things as we look towards wrapping this up. Let's talk about how somebody would come to you, how do they engage with you to get help from you, and then let's talk about how somebody who wants to get plugged in with volunteering. So I want to talk about two things as we look to wrap up here. I want to talk about how a veteran or male spouse can engage with you guys to get help. What does that look like? What are the expectations? And then also talk about how somebody who might want to volunteer with you. I think a lot of people really have misconceptions about, can I volunteer? Should I volunteer? What can I possibly bring to the table? So let's come at those two things in whatever order you prefer.
Sure. Let's start with the veteran or the military spouse looking for help. So we have a structured process. It starts with filling out our registration form on our website. So hireheroesusa.org. And there's a registration link to receive services. You fill out an online form. Depending on the day of the week that you fill it out, you usually hear back anywhere from 1 to 7 days. I'd say on average, you're assigned to your career coach within 1 to 2 weeks. And then it's really based on your availability, which dictates how quickly the rest of the process unfolds. But for most folks, they get connected on a Monday. By Wednesday or Thursday, they have a first copy of their resume. And then once they have their resume, they're working with their career coach on translating skills, starting to target their career search. And then that also includes connection points to our volunteer network, which is where the mentoring occurs. So again, just to reiterate, your career advisor is your concierge service provider throughout all of the services that we offer. But when it comes time to receive mentoring, which is usually more industry specific of, again, maybe I need help with my LinkedIn profile, or maybe I need help with mock interview preparation, or I just want to talk to somebody who works in project management in the aerospace industry. That's when your career advisor would then connect you directly to one of our volunteers. So we've got 1,400 industry SMEs. These are volunteer working professionals that can share their lived experience and answer those more targeted and specific questions about, how do I get a job like yours? How do I get through the interview process with your
Sure.
company, et cetera. So all of that would be facilitated through your career advisor, which again starts with getting on our website and filling out the form, and then we'll help you for as long as you need and can
Mhm.
connect you with as many mentors as you need, just based on what your specific questions are. What
That's
I
a
will
That's a really good point. I just wanted to highlight one thing. Why most people are looking for a career, they're not sitting around doing nothing. A
right.
lot of people have to get a job while they're working on a career. So to your point, I apply, I'm at work 8 to 5, whatever those hours might be. You've got to coordinate working with this organization, however that works out. So your volunteers are
Yes.
accustomed to that. So if it's 6 p.m., 7 p.m. calls, whatever that may look like, you guys are set up to do that, right?
Yes. And we'll take all of that into consideration when we're matching you. We do
Okay.
custom matching. We know all of our volunteers very well, and we put a lot of thought and effort into
Okay.
matching what the actual request is from the client, what type of help or expertise are they seeking versus what is the specific expertise of the volunteer that we will assign to be the mentor.
Okay.
So
Great.
that's what the process looks like from the perspective of a job seeker, one of our registered clients. Let's switch gears and talk a little bit about the mentor experience. So, say you're working in industry today, you think you'd like to give back, and you might be interested in helping veterans and military spouses. How do you engage with us, and how do you start that process? First, you do not need to be military affiliated. We have a great mix of folks that are prior military service members or spouses that want to give back, and that's great. And equally, we have a number of individuals that just don't know anything about military service necessarily, but want to give back and are really strong domain experts in their craft, in their profession, and can give you really targeted and actionable advice about how to pursue a career where they work. So, For them to register, similar process, but different link. You go on our website, hireheroesusa.org, fill out the mentor registration form. Somebody from our staff will call you and have an initial intake conversation. So we do vet all of our mentors just to make sure there's a good fit and alignment of the way that they want to engage and provide help versus how our clients need them to provide help and what the areas of expertise are. But for the most part, everybody has something to give. And maybe if you're earlier in your career, that something to give is here's how I navigated my own transition.
Mhm.
And as you get to be later in your career and have more lived experience or more career pivots of your own, then certainly you can mentor on a broader variety of skills. But we talk to you in person over the phone. We have a conversation around what is your career path, what are your skills and expertise, and then what do you want to provide coaching, mentoring, advice on? How do you think you can provide value to our veteran and military spouse clients? And we log all of that information, and then we also collect information on your availability. So if you're really busy, maybe you can only give 30 minutes once a quarter, or maybe you have more free time and you say, I can do a 1 hour mentoring call once a month or once a week. We will take all of that into consideration and mark your profile, and we can always change it and update it over time as your availability changes as well. But again, we really
Fantastic.
try to tailor that experience to what is the mentor's expertise and then how much time and commitment are they able and willing to make.
Great point. And I've heard all combination of that where the volunteer has a lot of time, the job seeker, as you call them, doesn't have enough. So like they're not responding to meetings and whatever, and vice versa, right? So the idea is to find the right match of those work up. So to hear that's a personal one-by-one assignment makes a lot of sense. This hasn't come up anywhere in the interview, and I don't think I've asked this to very many people. Obviously, this is a national challenge, right? There's people all over the country that need this service, and you can't be everywhere they are necessarily. Is 100% of this remote? Is there any part of this that's in-person stuff?
So all of our staff, or the majority of our staff, is remote, and the majority of all of our mentors are remote. So short answer is yes, we deliver our services virtually. So there are very little time constraints other than just time zone differences and making
Mhm.
sure we match that up appropriately. The caveat to that is we do have a handful of field teams. So, in terms of our core client service and how we engage with the community, we do have a couple of office locations and specific field teams across the country in certain geographic areas. But on the mentoring side for our volunteer network, for the most part, all of those volunteer conversations happen virtually over the phone. Occasionally, we do ask our volunteers if they want to participate at an event or come represent us on a panel, but those are all opt-in experiences.
Okay. Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. And you mentioned several links throughout this. I'll get all those following recording here, and I'll make sure those are in the show notes for the episodes. Let's tie a bow on it, Charlotte. I thank you so much for your time today and go over so many, not just examples of what you guys do, but just really giving the depth and breadth of the program on what all you guys have learned in 20 years of doing this and how you continue to rehone yourself based on whatever the challenges that they are. You're thrown on a stage. You've got 90 seconds to speak to an audience and give them one piece of advice. And let's talk specifically at service members or mil spouses, the job seekers. 90 seconds to tell them why they should get involved with HHUSA and the difference you can make. Wrap that up in a short summary.
Well, first, my advice would be don't be scared, be prepared. You already have the skills and the aptitude that you need. You just need to figure out how to translate it and apply it in a way that will resonate with those on the other side. And that's exactly why Hire Heroes USA exists. We will be your concierge, Sherpa, your guide, your career advisor throughout the process. And through us, we can also set you up with access to all of the other resources, education, training, et cetera, that you might need. So in that way, even though we might not deliver all of those services, we have the network connections to get you to where you need to go so that you can achieve your career outcome.
Wonderful. Don't be scared of networking. I know that word freaks people out, but it's really just more making acquaintances and friends and learning from their experiences and sharing yours. I want to knock down we need a glossary of terms we can knock down the fears behind them because that seems to be the biggest wall in front of people just to get started.
Yeah.
Charlotte, first off, thank you for your family sacrifice, what your husband did and what you guys continue to do. What you're doing is a day job and what you're doing after hours, as it turns out, to just pour back in this community who's some of the most deserving people on the planet. Thank you for what you do. And I really want to thank you for coming here today and sharing a little bit about what your program is, what it all that you're involved in. And I love the data behind what you're doing. So If you think of it when the report comes out, make sure to let me know. I'd love to follow up and include that as a link in this episode as well once it comes out. But thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Likewise, Greg, it's been my pleasure. Really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on Cirrius Talk, the Military Minute. If this episode helped you, here's your call to action. Share it with at least one veteran or military spouse who's staring down a career transition right now. That one share can be the difference between someone feeling stuck and someone taking the next step with confidence. Make sure you follow or subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. If you've got 30 seconds, please leave us a review. It helps more members of the military community find these resources when they need them the most. And to every veteran and military spouse listening, thank you. Your service and your sacrifice matter, and you don't have to navigate the next chapter alone. You'll find links and resources in the show notes based on today's conversation. And a special thank you goes out to Jason Fowler for allowing us use of his song, Mystery Road. If you have any follow-up questions, please email us at CirriusTalk@CirriusSolutions.com. The address will be in the show notes. This is Greg Banks signing off. We'll catch you at the next briefing.